Hey, what's up, everyone? It's your boy Rob here. Welcome to the Flame Entertainment and Sports. Hope everyone's doing good out there. Make sure to keep up with us on social media, on Instagram and TikTok at the Flame_ES. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Share with a friend. We greatly appreciate it. On this episode, we're going to be getting into season 34, episode 3 of Dancing with the Stars. And in the sports world, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the Dolphins finally picking up their first win of the year and a 27-21 win over the Jets. And then I preview their upcoming matchup on Sunday in Carolina against the Panthers. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. And with all that said, now let's start off in the entertainment world as we recap the third episode of season 34 of Dancing with the Stars. All right, guys, let's get into episode 3 of season 34 of Dancing with the Stars. It's been a great season so far, 2 episodes in, and now, thankfully, after episode 3, the show has gotten even better. Before we get into each couple, for those of you who haven't watched one of my, Dancing with the Stars recaps over the years, so I go couple by couple, giving, some notes, some things I think, each couple should improve on, some things that really stood out to me about each couple, and then I go and give my score, and then I give the actual score that they received from the judges. So with all that said, it was a night filled with a lot of great performances. Once again, the usuals at the top doing their thing, and we had a couple of these couples have been kind of in the middle, I would say, of the competition, really upping their game in night 3. And then, of course, the night ends with a shocking elimination. But before we get into all of that, we're going to start off with our first couple of the night. And by the way, this was TikTok night. I thought that was super cool. You think of TikTok, it started in 2017, so not even 10 years old. It's 8 years old, and they're already having their own like night on Dancing with the Stars. Obviously, we all know how big TikTok has gotten over the years, and especially ever since the COVID lockdown in 2020. But to see them have their own like night on Dancing with the Stars, not even being 10 years old as a company, I think speaks volumes to the type of impact TikTok has had on pop culture and continues to have on pop culture to this day. And even you think of the history of Dancing with the Stars, season 31 champion Charlie D'Amelio, she along with Addison Rae were arguably the first two like superstars to come out of TikTok. Charlie wins Dancing with the Stars. Addison right now is currently on a tour, doing a great job in her music career. And now we have Alix Earle, who's on this season of Dancing with the Stars. We have Jen Affleck. We have Whitney Levitt. They both started on Mom Talk, right? And now they're reality stars on The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Now they're both competing on Dancing with the Stars alongside Alix Earle, who also, rose to fame due to her Get Ready With Me videos while she was a student at the University of Miami. Go Canes. But yeah, guys, so with all that said, TikTok night, we started off the night with a couple that I've been really high on because I see a lot of potential in them, but I haven't necessarily been like completely amazed by them because I've stated, within our first 2 recaps that this couple has had too many lifts and not enough dance content. And that is Jen and Jan. Last week I really emphasized and talked about Jen and how much joy she brings, and her smile is just like contagious. And this couple's amazing to watch out on the ballroom floor. But that said, I am happy to say that Jen and Jan, this was the dance that had the least lifts so far in their 3 dances so far this season. But with that said, I feel like the dance content itself, starting in week 4 next week, I feel like we're going to have to see a little more energy or a little more type of fire, I guess, in the choreography. Because although it did not contain any lifts this week, I feel like there was a little something missing. Like it was a little stale, in my opinion. So with that said, though, I still do think this couple could last a couple more weeks, but ultimately, I feel like week 4 really is like the official start of like when things really start to get like crazy in this competition, and especially since this is honestly like this is one of the most competitive seasons we've ever seen of the show. Like the majority of these couples like have a legitimate chance to like reach the finale at this point. So like Jen and Yan, I'm hoping they really step up next week. But with that said, I gave them a 7. They received a 7 from Carrie Ann and then a 6 from Derek and a 6 from Bruno. So Jen and Yan end night 3 with a score of 19 out of 30. And one more thing, they danced to Cha Cha, to She's a Bad Man with Gemma. That's another cool thing. All these songs are songs that have gotten like pretty viral on TikTok. Now we move on to the second couple of the night, which was Lauren and Brandon. Of course, Lauren and Brandon, the first 2 weeks, they've been, in my opinion, one of the most consistent couples out there. Week 1, they came out with a bang. And in week 2, they somehow did even better. I remember their week 2 dance was just super, it was amazing to watch because it was such an elegant and classy performance that contained like such such great chemistry, I would say. Like, I feel like they have such great chemistry. They dance a cha-cha to Work From Home, which of course is a Fifth Harmony song, and the majority of her Fifth Harmony bandmates were there. Besides Camila Cabello, they were there in the audience to watch Lauren and cheer her on. So that was really cool to see a little Fifth Harmony reunion. I know they're set to go on tour sometime soon, so that was pretty cool to see. So yeah, Lauren and Brandon, like I said, their first two dances really wowed me. I would say between their first three dances, this was probably the worst one. Not that it was bad at all, but it wasn't as good as the first two. It didn't really stand out to me. It wasn't super like noteworthy in my opinion. It was actually like a step down to me, because I already expect so much more out of this couple. But with that said, I feel like this is kind of normal as well. Not every dance is gonna be so amazing and exciting. So with that said, I gave Lauren and Brandon a 7. I wrote down they needed a little more content. I kind of felt this was kind of stale. Like I kind of mentioned with Jen and Jan that, they need a little more fire. I feel like this one too is a little more on the stale side in my opinion, but at the same time, it was still a joy to watch this couple dance together. Like I said, I gave Lauren and Brandon a 7. They received 3 sixes from the judges. So Lauren and Brandon finished with an 18 out of 30. Now we move on to one of my favorite dances of the night. I think this was such a special and, standout performance in TikTok night. And that was between Danielle Fishel and Pasha Pashkov. They danced a foxtrot to Man Child by Sabrina Carpenter. They showed a video message that Sabrina sent to Danielle, ahead of her dancing to her song on Dancing with the Stars. And for those of you that don't know, Sabrina and Danielle, they first met on the set of Girl Meets World. They're both on that show together. And ever since then, they've had such a, strong relationship and bond. And Danielle even stated, during the show last night or on Tuesday that she considers Sabrina like a daughter, basically. So we know how special of a bond they have. And, every time Sabrina's released a new album, we see Danielle go to Target and take a picture with it, just like Sabrina does every time she drops an album. And, we just know how close they are. So going into this dance, I was already so excited because I know it would be so special. And seeing Sabrina send such a nice message to Danielle and seeing how happy Pasha got seeing that video message from Sabrina, I think was amazing to see. This is obviously such a likable couple. They've had such a great start already to their season so far. And then, yeah, I think they did even better than they did in their first two dances with this foxtrot. It was beautiful to watch. They go in like perfect like motion together. I don't know if that makes sense. Like they're perfectly in sync, I guess you could call it. Like this couple from night one, by the way, they've been completely on point, and we just see the progression of Danielle continue to rise up, and she just continues to get better week in and week out. And week one she suffers a hamstring injury. Week two she dances with the hamstring injury, and now we see her in week 3 come out better than ever. So it just speaks to the volumes about, how serious Danielle is taking this competition, how great of a coach Pasha has been for her, and how much passion and love, that Danielle's putting into each and every dance so far this season. Yeah, and one more note that I thought I should point out, the first 2 weeks we had Bruno tell Danielle that she had to work on her shoulders, because she was looking a little tensed up and her shoulders were a little too high. He kept telling her, and then thankfully for this third dance of the season for Danielle, she was able to completely, get away from those high shoulders and be a little more relaxed, on the dance floor. So that was amazing to see as well. I gave Danielle and Pasha an 8. They received 3 sevens from the judges, their highest score so far of the season, which is a 21 out of 30. Now we move on to Jordan and Ezra. This is a couple I haven't been super high on. In week 1, they're the first couple to dance this season in general. And, their first dance, was it great? No. Was it bad? No. But it was kind of, in the middle. Then in week 2, the judges and the majority of the audience really went crazy with their jive. I wasn't crazy about it, but I'm happy to say that this third dance of the season from Jordan and Ezra, I finally see what other people saw in week 2. This couple was completely in sync. I want to shout out Ezra. This is only his second year as a pro. And I think we're seeing the rise of a young star before our eyes. These last 2 dances have probably been the best choreography that Ezra has shown within his early 10 years of pro on Dancing with the Stars. So I'm super happy to see his hard work and dedication pay off. And we're seeing the great chemistry as well between Jordan and Ezra. And we're seeing Jordan, it's not just Ezra and his choreography, but we also see the coach, and we see him getting better as a coach, putting Jordan in better, situations to succeed for herself. And I thought this was an amazing tango by this couple. They danced Tango to Anxiety, which of course has gone viral for a long time. The song by Dochi, and And it was cool. Jordan, after the dance, she kind of broke down and, she dedicated this to her anxiety over the years and saying how much anxiety she got in her career in gymnastics. And she kind of put out a message that people don't realize how much anxiety athletes go through because of all the, criticism and all the comments that people make about them. And I thought it was like a really special night and a special moment. And even Carrie Ann expressed, that she gets anxiety from time to time, and it was just a very emotional thing overall. But thankfully, it wasn't just emotional; it was also a beautiful performance to watch. And I put it's definitely their best dance of the season so far. Great chemistry. They're focused. They're locked in. They had that hungry mentality. And something I want to mention on here. This is a quote from Jordan. So I gave them an 8. They received 3 8s from the judges. Their highest score of the season so far, 24 out of 30. But I had to write down this quote because this kind of, the first thing I thought of was Mamba mentality. And Julianne asked Jordan how she feels after receiving the highest scores of the season so far. She says, I feel good, but we aren't done yet. And she was like super serious. You could tell this couple's just super locked in. So, I'm super excited now. I think we officially have another contender on the rise here in Jordan Childs and Ezra Sosa. Now we move on to another great couple who's shown so many flashes in the first 2 weeks, and now in the third week, I think they have officially solidified themselves as a true contender, just like Ezra and Jordan. That is Dylan and Daniella. They danced a foxtrot to Yukon by Justin Bieber. And yeah, it was just unbelievable to watch this performance. I described in week 2, Dylan, from a sports perspective, I kind of described him as, when a young player comes into the league and his rookie season, his first couple games, we see these like flashes and we're like, wow, if he really gets the right coaching around him and the right people around him and he puts it all together, this guy's going to be a superstar. That's how I described Dylan after the first 2 weeks. And now in week 3, I think, man, he may be beyond that phase of just being a young player with flashes. I think Dylan's on his way to truly competing for a Mirrorball because this foxtrot was absolutely unbelievable. Dylan and Daniela were in sync from start to finish, looking just like Danielle and Daniela's husband, Pasha. I mean, the chemistry, how in sync they were, it was just amazing to see. They're completely locked in. They also gave me that vibe of Jordan and Ezra, like Dylan and Daniela. They just seemed so focused and ready to attack this dance and to, kind of like shut down all the criticism. A lot of people have loved Dylan, but they've also criticized him because they've only talked about his flashes. They haven't really considered him as a serious, threat to be a contender. But I think he kind of, shut down all the criticism this week because him and Daniela absolutely killed this foxtrot. And yeah, once again, I gotta mention both of them have great smiles, great charm and charisma, and they're just an absolute joy to watch out there on the barroom floor. I gave Dylan and Daniela an 8. They received a 7 from Carrie Ann, an 8 from Derek, and an 8 from Bruno. So Dylan and Daniela finished with a 23 out of 30. Now we move on to Elaine and Alan, who have just been a completely pleasant surprise, in my opinion, so far in this competition. You think of week 1, Elaine and Alan just came out there, and I don't think people realize how good of a dancer Elaine was going to be, because obviously we know her from her long career in movies and television and all that stuff, so we didn't really know she could dance. It turns out she did dance in college, but then she had to stop because of an injury. So to see her come back now all these years later, 54 years old, and kill it week in and week out on the barroom floor, it's been amazing to see, and especially, alongside one of the all-time loved pros in the history of the show, and Alan. And yeah, they did it once again, Elaine and Alan. They danced a tango, a gnarly, and it was another amazing performance to watch. I put they're locked in. I also saw that vibe from Elaine and Alan. I think a lot of these couples were kind of in the middle, and not quite at that contender level yet. I think they're absolutely locked in, and they kind of realized that this season's very different comparisons to most season in the past because it's so competitive. So yeah, I think Elaine and Alan they look completely locked in and focused. They were more on point this week. I kind of mentioned in week 2 that I love their dance to Hey Mickey. The whole cheerleading routine, it was super cool. But I felt in the beginning that Elaine was kind of off timing. But I did mention that she was able to pick it up midway through. But I'm happy to say this week they were on point from start to finish. They have a great chemistry. And Elaine, she's beautiful to watch as always. You look at her legs. You just look at the way she's able to move out there on the barroom floor. It's amazing to see the progression week in and week out now of Elaine and Alan. I was very impressed. I gave them an 8. They received 3 7s from the judges, so they get a 21 out of 30. Now we move into a couple that I've arguably considered them the top couple this whole season so far because they just continue to amaze me week in and week out, and that is Whitney and Mark. I mean, their first two dances, I described them as unbelievable, unreal. They just continue to blow me away, and I'm happy to say this again. I wrote this in my notes: unbelievable times three. Like last week, I put unbelievable times two. Now it's unbelievable times three. Unreal, great timing, great chemistry, beautiful, a complete joy to watch. Because I mean, I don't know what other words to describe this couple as. I think Whitney and Mark. I said it last week. I'll say it again. Like Whitney and Mark are already an all-time great duo in the history of the show, and Whitney's already one of the all-time great contestants in the history of this show. They're just unbelievable to watch. Like the chemistry they've shown from day one, and Whitney's ability to just pick up on any dance week in and week out is just unbelievable to see. I'm just like completely trying to like take it all in and appreciate this couple as a true fan of this show because man, what they've been able to do out there is just unreal. I don't know how else to describe it. I know I've been using the word unbelievable this whole like season describing them, but I don't know what else to say about them. They're unbelievable. They dance the samba to Shake Your Ass, Watch Yourself, which is a super catchy and fun song. And yeah, they absolutely killed it again for the third week in a row. I gave them a 10. They received 3 8s from the judges. So Whitney and Mark finished with a 24 out of 30. Now we move on to Scott and Riley. They danced a jazz to Like Jenny, super good song by Jenny of formerly of Blackpink. It's gone super viral on TikTok. And yeah, Scott and Riley, this is a couple. I've described them as a couple that's been like surprisingly good from early on. Like I expected them to be fine, but I didn't expect they'd be at the level that they're at like week in and week out already in this competition. And yeah, this was another step in the right direction in my opinion. You think of week one, I thought they were much better than people expected. Week two, they made an improvement, and I appreciated Scott. He really took that critique from week one and brought it into the dance floor, put it into action in week two, and now in week three, Scott looked even better, and they just looked overall better as a couple, and that's something that you want to see, and I think that should be the goal at the end of the day for each of these couples is to like show progression week in and week out and show clear improvement rather than complaining or rather than like kind of ignoring the judges, critiques and all that sort of stuff. Like these two are taking it into action. They're improving on the little tweaks that the judges are, requesting of them to do. And they're just showing improvement week in and week out. So congratulations once again to Scott and Riley. A huge improvement. It was powerful. They were locked in. They were hungry. And Riley's incredible as always to watch. I gave Scott and Riley a 7. They received an 8 from Carrie Ann, a 7 from Derek, and a 7 from Bruno. So they finished with a 22 out of 30. Huge improvement for Scott and Riley. Now we move on to the couple who's arguably been, the third best couple in this competition so far, behind Whitney and Mark and Robert and Whitney, and that is Hilaria and Gleb. And they had another amazing performance. They danced a samba. It was completely on point. Hilaria has always showed great movement. She literally looks like a pro out there week in and week out next to Gleb. She's beautiful to watch as always, obviously. And, they showed great chemistry once again. So, I mean, this couple has kind of been a repetition week in and week out. Like, I feel there's, like, not really much to criticize on. And it's just, like, a beautiful performance to watch week in and week out, watching Hilaria and Gleb on the ballroom floor here on Dancing with the Stars. I gave Hilaria and Gleb a 9. They received a 7 from Carrie Ann, an 8 from Derek, and a 7 from Bruno. So, Hilaria and Gleb finished with a 22 out of 30. Now we move on to a couple that I've been pretty, highly critical of, not to be personal, but their first two dances I thought were arguably the worst two of the season so far. They surprisingly, in my opinion, survived the first elimination. And that was Andy and Emma. They danced a foxtrot, and I'm happy to say that I was finally impressed by a dance by this couple. Like I said, the first two dances didn't really impress me whatsoever, but this dance, this foxtrot between Andy and Emma, it was very emotional. It was like a feel-good type of performance to watch. It actually brought tears of joy. At the end of it, I literally had tears of joy in my eyes because now I could actually feel the type of person that Andy is, rather than what I thought of him in week one after that comment that he made that he's only there for the paycheck, which really rubbed me the wrong way. I think in week three, I'm happy to say that, yeah, I actually now understand why this couple has such a big fan base. Like, I understood Emma. I'm a huge Emma fan, and so many people love Emma, but I didn't really get the appeal as to how they survived the first elimination. But now I understand it. yeah, like I said, it was just such a feel good performance. Obviously, in terms of dance, is it amazing? No, but it was such a huge improvement in my eyes. I gave them a 6, and they received 3 6s from the judges, so their highest score of the season so far for Andy and Emma, an 18 out of 30. Now we move on to the final two couples of the night, two of the true contenders from day one. First off, we have Robert and Whitney, who have been arguably the best couple so far, along with Whitney and Mark. This time, Robert and Whitney danced the salsa, the $1 Million Baby, of course, super viral sound on TikTok. I wrote, once again, unreal, unbelievable times 3, just like I wrote for Whitney and Mark. I mean, I kind of describe these couples like in such a similar light because they have both amazed me from night 1 all the way to night 3 now. And yeah, I put Whitney's incredible as well. I mean, she's unbelievable. Her choreography, watching her, obviously she's beautiful, and just everything about Whitney, everything she's able to do for her partners, and her ability to put each and every one of her partners in the best possible position to succeed. It's just underrated and unbelievable what Whitney's able to do on a season to season basis and a week to week basis. Honestly, definitely an all time great pro in the history of Dancing with the Stars. And yeah, Robert and Whitney, like I said, I don't know what else to describe them with. Like I said, I already said it, but unreal, unbelievable times 3. Once again, I gave them a 10, just like I did with Whitney and Mark. And Robert and Whitney received an 8 from Carrie Ann, a 7 from Derek, and a 7 from Bruno. So Robert and Whitney finished with a 22 out of 30. And I do want to shout out the judges in this case because their only issue, sort of with the judge, specifically Derek and Bruno, was that it was lacking salsa content. And after hearing them and then kind of looking back at the dance, I was like, wow, they're totally right. I just feel these two are so entertaining that it's easy to kind of like forget what type of style of dance you're dancing. But like after like really like taking a look back at their dance, it really made sense. And I thought Derek and Bruno did a hell of a job here giving Robert and Whitney the correct criticism. At the end of the day, this is such a competitive season, like I've repeated multiple times on here today. And, they really got to lock down and make sure they're doing the right steps at the end of the day. It's not all about the show. It's a mixture of presenting a nice show, but also, perfecting the right steps in the specific style of dance that you're dancing on that given week. So I want to shout out the judging there. And then our final couple of the night, arguably my favorite couple of the season, Alix Earle and Val. They've been a complete joy to watch week in and week out so far. They danced a quick step to pop music. It was another unbelievable performance for me. I thought this was a huge improvement. Like in week 1, I was impressed. Week 2, I was impressed. But now week 3, I'm even more impressed with Alix and Val. So that's exactly what you want to see. Like when I was talking about Scott and Riley, that they've just continued to show improvement week in and week out. That's what I'm seeing from Alix and Val as well. And when I wrote in my notes, I put LFG, so let's effing go. I put unbelievable, and then I put we love Valix Churl. I don't know if that's a thing. Maybe we make it a thing. So we love hashtag Valix Churl. So there you go. I gave Valix Churl, aka Alix and Val, a 10, and they received an 8 from Carrie Ann, a 7 from Derek, which really surprised me, and then an 8 from Bruno. And so they finished with a 23 out of 30. And that is our final couple of the night for TikTok night, episode 3, season 34 of Dancing with the Stars. Now, as always, for the final commercial break, right before the elimination results, I read down my predictions for night 3. My prediction and my gut was telling me that Elaine and Alan were going to be sent home. And the actual result ended up being, like I described here, one of the most shocking eliminations in Dancing with the Stars history. And that was Lauren and Brandon, a couple who, like I said, the first 2 weeks absolutely looked like contenders. Week 3, like I said, it was definitely a downgrade, but there was no, I don't think anyone was thinking, oh, they're going to be sent home tonight. And then one more thing I want to mention about this elimination, I put feel Sabrina Bryan-esque. For those of you that don't remember, Sabrina Bryan, she was on the show twice, first time on a regular season. Then she got called back, and she was on a like all-star season. But during her regular season appearance, she and Mark Ballas actually were, arguably the best couple on the season during that time. And they got sent home in week 6, and it was absolutely shocking. Probably to this day, arguably the most shocking elimination in the show's history. But now we got to put Lauren and Brandon, because not only, like, obviously Sabrina and Mark going home in week 6 was shocking, but then to see Lauren and Brandon going home in technically week 3, but elimination number 2 is just even more shocking when you really think about it. So, shout out to Lauren and Brandon. You guys did a hell of a job. Like, there's no reason for you guys to put your head down or feel bad, because I think you guys did a hell of a job night in and night out. And at the end of the day, there's only so much that the judging does. At the end of the day, the votes do matter. So, now going forward, for those of you who have like specific favorites and you don't want to see them go home, now you have more of an incentive, I guess, or more, more proof that the voting really does count. So you guys got to make sure to text, the show airs from 8 to 10 on Tuesdays live on Disney Plus and ABC. So make sure during that time frame, by the way, it's 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. So of course, I know it's kind of difficult for those in like different time zones, especially, in the West Coast. So yeah, for those of you who really want to see your favorites continue to, advance, make sure to, vote for them during the live show to ensure that, they have a better chance of staying in the competition. So yeah, guys, another great episode of Dancing with the Stars, another great show. Whitney, Mark, and Robert and Whitney once again kept it rolling and proved why they've been at the top of the leaderboard. Then I wrote Alix, Dylan, and Danielle. Though they are coming, and they're right on the doorsteps, right there, trying to reach out to Whitney and Mark and Robert and Whitney. So I'm super excited about that. I would do want to shout out the very much improved judging. I was a little critical last week of the judging because I thought Carrie Ann was kind of all over the place, and I don't know, some of the scores and then her critiques didn't really make sense or they didn't really match. But you could tell this week the judging was more serious and, more serious in terms of really like focusing on the dance techniques. And I think that's really the element we want to see. And that's when you really think of Len Goodman, rest in peace to the legend. But man, he was, you could tell he had a big heart. He was such a nice guy. But at the end of the day, he wanted all of these couples to do the right exact steps so that they're completely honoring, the art of dance at the end of the day. So I'm hoping this mindset and this way of judging that the three judges showed on TikTok night, I hope it's a continued trend this season, starting off next week with Disney night. That's gonna be fun as always, Disney night. And I do want to shout out Alfonso and Julianne. I feel like I never talk about them on here because at the end of the day, I'm not like critiquing their hosting style or anything, but I just wrote down on my note, shout out Alfonso and Julianne. Like I said, I never really talk about them on here, but they're such great co-hosts on this show. They do an amazing job week in and week out, and I thought they deserved to, get some love, man, because they do a hell of a job. They bring so much joy, and they're just, amazing to watch, and I think we all love them as fans of Dancing with the Stars. And then I wrote, I love you, Dancing with the Stars, and I truly mean it, This show means a lot to me, and once again, I want to thank God for allowing me the opportunity to share my thoughts to the world on such a show that means so much to me. So, yeah, guys, with all that said, it's going to wrap up our Dancing with the Stars season 34, episode 3 recap. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys want to share your thoughts on Dancing with the Stars so far, anything you're looking forward to in the coming weeks, and you're watching here on YouTube, make sure to comment down here below. You could also share your thoughts on the show with us via Instagram and TikTok at the flame_ES. And yeah, guys, once again, shout out to Dancing with the Stars. All right, guys, now let's get into the sports world where I'll be giving my thoughts on my Miami Dolphins finally picking up our first win of the season as we defeat the New York Jets by a final score of 27-21 on Monday Night Football in front of our home fans here at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. We improved to 1-3 on the year, and I'm just so happy that we were finally able to have a night of celebration after such a rough, first 3 weeks of the season. As a true, diehard Dolphin fan, yeah, all I could say was that, I'm glad I was able to really take in the moment and just, feel good on that night of the game and really take it all in because, like I said, it's been such a, struggle. The first 3 seasons has been like really hard overall to really like watch. It's never hard for me to watch the team. I know I'm crazy. I love this team so much. So it's never going to be hard for me to watch the team. But the thing I guess I could describe it as was like there was really zero hope, in my opinion, the first 3 weeks. And I know week 2, like we kind of beat ourselves. We should have beat New England. And then week 3, I feel the same way that we probably should have beat Buffalo. But even with like, oh, we should have or we could have, like at the end of the day, like we didn't beat them. So like you can't go back in time and be like, oh, if we would have done this play, we could have won. I don't like to play that game. It gets kind of tiring after so many years, as a Dolphin fan here, like being like, oh, what if, at the end of the day, that does nothing. We just got to move forward. And as fans, as always, all we could like control is, showing our support for the team, cheering them on and just like hoping for the best. Cause at the end of the day, what other choice do we have? We can't make any decisions. We can't call any of the plays. Obviously, we could all give our opinions and, I'm going to continue to give my opinions going forward as always. But yeah, I just thought like I wanted to start it off with like a little positive message to all the Dolphin fans listening, or any fan of any type of team. You know, if your team's kind of in a slump, or going through some struggles, man. At least if there's one game of of like some joy and positivity where they're able to achieve something nice and get a win. I'm just saying, like just make sure to take it in, because at the end of the day, yeah, you just gotta really enjoy those positive moments, because they're really brief to come by. So yeah, shout out to the Dolphins, finally pick up a win. Like I said, 27-21. My opinion as to why the Dolphins truly were able to like capture this win. First off, I want to start off with the defense. I've talked about it. I talked about it last week on the show. I said how this defense from week 1 to week 3, they very much improved. The best I saw the Dolphins defense play was towards the end of the third quarter, and for the entirety of the fourth quarter in their week 2 loss at home against New England. That's really when I started to see like a turning point in the defense. Then I thought in week 3 against Buffalo was definitely their best overall performance of the season. We saw huge improvements in that game from the secondary. Jack Jones, I said it last week, his best game as a Dolphin was against Buffalo. We had a huge improvement in the linebacking core, specifically from Tyrell Dodson in that second half against Buffalo. The pass rush little by little. Bradley Chubb was able to pick up a sack against Josh Allen. And, the defense just showed a lot of promise. And, I'm happy to say that, yeah, one of the reasons I believe we beat the Jets, because the defense was in full force and on complete, they're just completely ready to go from start to finish. And as always, I got to credit our defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver. I feel like this guy's such an underrated defensive coordinator. One of the reasons why I'm so high on this guy and why I believe he will be a great head coach in this league one day is because he's shown the ability to adjust. And when you really look at all the great coaches in the history of sports, not just in the NFL and not just in the professional level, one of the great attributes that you see in these great coaches is the ability to adjust. I get kind of annoyed when you see these coaches who kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again, only sticking to one sort of like philosophy or way of thinking, and hoping that from one day to another it's just going to change out of nowhere. You got to adjust at the end of the day, and that's what Anthony Weaver's continued to show in his young tenure as a Dolphins defensive coordinator. He showed it last week, midway through the season. In my opinion, last year the defense very much improved, and I remember he started off the year last year calling a lot of zone. Then midway through, he started adjusting to more man-to-man, and all of a sudden the defense looked much better than it had at the start of the season. And already this year, he's showing improvement in that unit even earlier than he showed last year. I think it speaks volumes, yeah, to the type of coach that this guy is really. And when you kind of look at what's been given him to work with, I think Anthony Weaver just continues to show that he's willing to work with whatever you give him, and he's going to just go above and beyond and continue to work on his game plans and continue to adjust and continue to, figure out ways to put each of these players in the best possible, positions to succeed and to help the team win overall. And then another reason why I believe we finally got a win against the Jets is because Mike McDaniel, for the first time in maybe all his 4 years, I really don't remember the last time he did this. He was finally willing to stick to the run game, something that I've been wanting for such a long time. We ran the ball 31 times for 123 yards. Devon Achane ran for 99 yards overall. I believe he had 19 carries, I want to say. Ali Gordon, he's getting involved little by little against Buffalo. That's the most carries he's had. He didn't have as many carries in this game, but I'm just glad that McDaniel's also willing now to use a running back besides Devon Achane. But yeah, man, sticking to the run game works wonders for your offense. And it's really more simple than people will kind of realize at the end of the day. I mean, look at our offensive line in this game, right? Like, we literally had a guy out there in right guard, Strange, right? Cole Strange. We picked him up a couple weeks ago off of the Patriots practice squad. This guy was a first round pick maybe 2 or 3 years ago by Bill Belichick with New England. And now look, a couple years later, he was on their practice squad. And, we picked him up a couple weeks ago. Now he is starting at right guard. And I mean, our offensive line did a hell of a job because, in my opinion, when you commit to the run, you're giving confidence in these offensive linemen. And then you're also giving them the ability to push forward, which is a clear advantage for them and a clear disadvantage for the defensive linemen who are trying to come through that offensive line at the end of the day. So look, and then another thing that like committing to the run does, it opens up the play action. It opens up the field for the quarterback and for the receivers to get open. How many times in this game did we see Tua, find the ball to a bunch of open wide receivers? And the reason for that is because we were running the ball so damn good and consistent that the Jets were willing to let us pass the ball. because they had no other choice, and they really couldn't believe that they could actually stop our running game. So they were like, you know what? We rather, let them, throw a couple passes than completely run over us the whole entire game. So yeah, in my opinion, that's something I've been asking for years. So obviously, the hope is now that Mike McDaniel going forward officially commits to the run game for the first time in his career, really, when you think about it. And if he really does, like, I'm telling you, this could be a completely different offense, like a completely different football team overall. When you look at the improvements already from defense, and then if this guy's able to finally commit to running the damn ball, I'm telling you, like, this could be a completely different football team. But with all that said, like, all we can hope for now is that he continues to, now commit to the run game and adjust going forward. And, I do want to shout out Tyreek Hill, and, we're praying for him and sending him all our best, as he did suffer, a freak accident in this game, after catching a nice pass for a first down from Tua. His knee made like a super weird motion on the sideline, and unfortunately he dislocated his left knee, as well as tore his ACL and MCL in that same left knee. But thankfully he had a successful surgery, and he's expected to recover. So that's the main thing at the end of the day, and we wish him a super speedy, healthy, and happy recovery going forward. And now, the adjustments will continue to come as well now, because now we're going to see other guys get opportunities that they haven't received, with Tyreek Hill involved in the offense. Someone I want to shout out who is now going to be a bigger focal point than ever before, Darren Waller, man. He finally made his Dolphins debut. He's been a super frustrating topic amongst Dolphin fans this whole season. We brought him in from the Giants in the offseason. We traded a 6th-round pick to get him. He was retired last year. He practiced one time in training camp. He hadn't practiced at all, I feel like, the whole season. Then this week leading up to the game, he finally practiced, but I still didn't think he was going to play. He ends up playing, and in his Dolphins debut, he catches 3 passes, and 2 of them were touchdowns. And I think his 2 touchdowns clearly showed that one of the main reasons the Dolphins struggled so much last year in the red zone is because we didn't have a lot of big-bodied guys to use in the red zone. And now you see the difference. When you put a tall guy out there, it becomes a mismatch nightmare for opposing defenders, and it's such a better and easier target for Tua to throw the ball up to, because at the end of the day, as good as Tyreek Hill is, as good as Malik Washington is, Jalen Waddle, these guys are under 6 feet tall, so they're nowhere near like red zone threats. I don't know, if you kind of put it together, like, a lot of this stuff is so much more simple than people realize. Like I said, with the running game, and now when you look at this, like, yes, of course, like, even Tua said it. I saw one of his quotes after the game. He's like, I remember that last time I just kind of threw the ball up, by the goalpost, and someone was able to jump up and get it. And it makes complete sense. So now the hope is, obviously, Waller. The main thing at the end of the day is that we keep him healthy somehow. And then now I'm excited to actually see Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, who we brought in from the Titans in the offseason. He got 13 touchdowns last year for Tennessee. He's a big-bodied guy. He's around 6'2" or 6'3". So he's a perfect red zone target to put alongside Darren Waller. And then another guy who I'm recording this Wednesday, October 1st at 5:23 p.m. Eastern time. A couple hours ago, the Dolphins actually announced a reuniting of sorts, and Cedric Wilson, who was our number 3 receiver for the first couple years of the McDaniel era here, alongside Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And Wilson's another guy, just like Westbrook-Ikhine. He's around 6'2" or 6'3". So now I'm even more excited to see our offense in the red zone, because I think this is really going to work wonders for Tua as well, to have another big-body guy. So I'm hoping that now Westbrook-Ikhine, Waller, and Cedric Wilson will be focal points going forward. Obviously, alongside Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and Devon Achane, and Ollie Gordon, and even Julian Hill. Man, he's not a number 1 tight end. I think we all know that. And now you even saw Julian Hill pick up a nice 19-yard catch in this game. Now that Waller's on the field, and not Waller, the defense is going to focus on Waller, not on Julian Hill. So now you see a team full of big-bodied guys, but the hope is that McDaniel actually uses them and puts them when we're in the red zone, rather than using all these shorter guys in the red zone. So we're going to have to wait and see, and we hope that we see these big-body guys being used starting on Sunday, as the Dolphins head to Carolina to take on the 1-3 Carolina Panthers. So 2 1-3 teams battling out. Hopefully the Dolphins pick up, their second consecutive win. And yeah, for this game now, to talk about this upcoming game with Carolina now, it's going to be an interesting game. As always, got to commit to the run. That's my philosophy. And then defense, I trust Anthony Weaver so much right now that I don't even have a specific thing that I want him to do against the Carolina offense. Honestly, I trust Weaver so much that whatever he does out there, I'm confident that the defense is going to be ready to go. And as I've said repeatedly now on this segment here about the Dolphins, like, the hope is that McDaniel commits to the run game, as he did, just like he did in this win against the Jets, and that he starts to use these big body guys more, and now we need them more than ever before with Tyreek Hill officially out for the season. But yeah, guys, gonna wrap with my thoughts on the Dolphins finally getting a win. If you guys have any thoughts you want to share on the Dolphins win against the Jets, make sure to comment down here below on YouTube, or you could also share your thoughts on the Fins via Instagram and TikTok at @theflame_ES. If you have any things you're looking forward to for their upcoming game in Carolina, any predictions you have for that game and you want to share with us, you could do that as well. But yeah, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this sports segment where we broke down the Dolphins' 27-21 win against the Jets, and we look forward to their upcoming matchup in Carolina against the Panthers. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Flame Entertainment and Sports. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to share your thoughts on any of these topics we covered today, Dancing with the Stars or the Dolphins, make sure to hit us up on Instagram and TikTok at @theflame_ES. If you're watching on YouTube, you could also, drop your comments down below here. And yeah, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for more content coming your way. We're going to start covering Saturday Night Live once again like we did last season. The season 51 premiere is this Saturday. So make sure to tune into that on NBC and Peacock. We have Bad Bunny hosting and Doja Cat performing. So yeah, guys, with all that said, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, everyone, fins up and take care.